is where MAGA comes to talk. Welcome, one and all. Okay, so we're starting to get the beginnings of the deal that Putin and Trump agreed to, that he's going to present to Zelensky on Monday. And it's being reported that the Putin-Trump-Zelensky summit meeting is being coordinated now. So there'll be this meeting on Monday, and then there's going to be, as of now, a third meeting with Trump as the mediator between Putin and Zelensky. Welcome, everyone. If you're new to the channel, make sure that you subscribe, all right? Okay, so the deal comes down to really very basic things that in so many ways are quite reasonable. And this is what the deal is. That, and I'll tell you what Zelensky wants, and then we'll get more details as more of this. I knew they had, I told you guys yesterday that they had a deal. The media saying that they didn't, and I'm going to tell you what the media is going to start doing soon too. But the deal, I told you they had a deal. I told you guys, there's, you know, first off, President Trump wouldn't have gone there if they didn't have some type of framework and agreement already, you know, and he wouldn't have had that press conference or the meeting tomorrow, or I'm sorry, tomorrow it is, it's Sunday, believe it or not. It seems like Saturday still, but it is Sunday. He wouldn't have done all that if he didn't have some type of deal going on. So here's what it is. Putin's going to keep a chunk of the territory that they've taken back from Ukraine. That's just the way it is. There's different regions you'll hear people name. You know, Americans, if they're honest, all these liberals, they're going to have outrage about the territory. They don't even know these regions. They couldn't find them on a map. Most of the liberals that are opposed to President Trump couldn't find Ukraine on a map that wasn't labeled. In fact, before this war happened, over 90% of Americans would not be able to find Ukraine on a map that wasn't labeled. It's, you know, all you got to do is, you know where Crimea is, find Crimea, then go north. And what Zelensky wants are U.S. or NATO, either a NATO or a U.S. presence along the border between Russia and Ukraine when the peace deal is made. And that is, you know, listen, Ukraine is not a NATO nation. I think President Trump's idea a few months ago was the best idea. He wanted these mineral rights in Ukraine and have American companies move in there to do the mining. And that would mean American companies, American workers, and American families living in that region. And Russia is not going to do anything that's going to result in Americans being harmed. So I think that's the best way, because, you know, with the civilian Americans there working and living, that's a DMZ in itself. But it's it seems pretty reasonable if you want to stop the fighting. Now, that being said, you know, that doesn't mean that Putin doesn't want all of Ukraine. Of course he does. Everyone knows this. But if you want to stop the war, if you want to stop the fighting, and you want to stop the death now, it's what you got to do. If you want to have an endless war that goes on for decades, keep doing what you're doing. It may not even go on that long, because Ukraine is losing so many people. How long would they be able to fight before we'd have to send forces in on the ground? Now, this is that's a pretty reasonable peace plan. Now, what the media are going to do, you're going to start to hear, probably, I don't know if they'll start it now, during or after the Monday meeting, or the final meeting when Trump gets together with Putin and Zelensky. But they're going to start this Neville Chamberlain BS. They're going to start comparing President Trump to Neville Chamberlain. And if you don't know what that means and who that was, you're probably a Democrat. So look it up. Listen, whatever peace agreement that President Trump comes to, it does not mean we're going to have the end of hostilities there, because here's the deal. If whatever the main purpose of what Trump is doing is to stop the fighting and stop the killing now. Right? That's the main goal. Hold on a second, guys. Okay, that's the main goal. So President Trump wants to end the war. He wants to end the fighting. He wants to end the killing. So this will stop that. And if we put the American companies on the Ukraine-Russian border, in the Donbass region, whatever region they decide is going to be the border, if there's troops there, NATO troops, American troops, civilian American companies, okay, that'll stop fighting there. But Ukraine still has a border with Russia, with Crimea. So, Putin could very well come along down the road after Trump leaves office and make a move through Crimea. And that wouldn't be surprising. Hey, that's the way it is. You got to handle one thing at a time. Let's end the war. Let's stop the killing. Let's stop the death. Let's get these children returned that First Lady Melania Trump wrote about in that letter to Putin, and get the fighting over. Enough. There's never going to be a permanent solution between Russia and Ukraine while Putin's running Russia. There's always going to be conflict from time to time over the years, even with this being settled by Trump. Now, there's some situations where the parties just aren't going to get along, like the Palestinians and the Israelis, okay? There's no permanent peace to that while they border each other. There just isn't. There's always going to be conflicts and issues from time to time. So you have to go in with that understanding. And, it's important for people to remember that Joe Biden's responsible for this war. President Trump's doing his best to clean up Biden's mess. And what Biden did that started this war is he kept talking about Ukraine becoming a NATO member. And Putin has been adamant about that. That cannot be allowed. It's too much. It's too much of a instigating kind of event for Putin. But if Biden would not have been talking about making Ukraine part of NATO, this war never would have happened. Never would have happened. When Tucker interviewed Putin, Putin told a story that I haven't heard denials from, that Bill Clinton was ready to allow Russia to become a NATO member when he was president. And his staff told him he couldn't do it, and he changed his mind. He told Putin they should have become a NATO member. A lot of this crap we wouldn't be dealing with if Russia would have become part of NATO. This is a reality that the accept. Russia is not America's enemy. They never have been. The Cold War was complete BS propaganda for the military-industrial complex. And they're not our enemy now. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not justifying him invading Ukraine. I'm an anti-war guy like President Trump. But you got to deal with the situation that we've got, not what you would like things to be or what things should be. Now, if you're new to my channel, my name's Brian. This is where MAGA comes to talk. Make sure that you subscribe. So I think Trump's doing a damn good job with Putin in Ukraine. You know, and they're going to try to, you know, the left and the media, they want to blame Ukraine on Trump, which we're not going to let that happen because that's just complete BS. This is Biden's war. It happened as a direct result of Biden for the reasons I just told you about NATO. And while the peace agreement isn't a perfect agreement, because if they agree to it, because Ukraine's going to have to give up some of that territory, it's Biden's fault. What are you supposed to do? Let the war continue out of ego? I don't think so. I mean, this peace with honor thing, that's what gave us Vietnam's disastrous ending. Where liberals couldn't, you know, the rules of engagement in Vietnam were insane. It's a hot one today. It is, let's see here, it is 3:22 a.m. here on the East Coast and 84 degrees already in sunny South Florida, although the sun's not up yet. 84 degrees already. Holy smokes. If it's 84 degrees at 3:22 a.m., it's going to be a scorcher today. So now, now give me a yes or no in the chat. I've gone over what's going on. Do you think Trump's making a good deal? I say yes, considering the mess that Biden created here. I think he's doing a pretty good job, considering. What else is Trump supposed to do? Allow this war to go on with more killing every year? No. We got to end it now. Try to get a permanent thing going down the road. Yeah, a lot of yeses in there, absolutely. Now, I've not been up all night. I got up early. I'm going somewhere. But it's a nice time on the road. There's hardly any cars on the road. You know, I don't know where in Florida this was. It wasn't very specific in the article I read this morning, but I just looked at it real quick before I left. I was looking at the news before I left my house a little while ago. And an illegal alien, one of Biden and Obama and Kamala Harris's dreamer, an illegal alien driving a truck, a commercial vehicle truck, made some type of illegal U-turn and killed some Americans here in Florida. I mean, it's just, you know, all these crimes and death that are committed by illegals, they're all preventable by keeping the border shut. You know, you got to wonder, President Trump, over 1.6 million illegals have been deported, and that does not include all the self-deportations that have happened. But how many people have not come into the country illegally because President Trump has shut down the southern border? How many? Oh, we don't know, right? How many people are alive today that would have been killed if President Trump did not shut down the border and do these deportations? I mean, think about it. How many Americans have not been the victims of crime of any kind because President Trump shut down the border and did these deportations? It's a number we don't know, but it's a large number. I'll tell you that. Think about it. You know, this passage with the coyotes, with the illegals coming through Latin America, through Mexico, into the United States. How many women and children have not been victimized and raped by these human traffickers on the path to the United States? Oh my goodness. The good that President Trump has done with his southern border and immigration policy is amazing. He deserves a Nobel Peace Prize just for that alone. It's absolutely amazing. It really is. You know, it's with President Trump, you know, there is not a single policy of President Trump's in this second term that is not popular with the American people. You know, yesterday afternoon, I went to Starbucks, got some coffee, and I'm talking to the guy at Starbucks, and I don't carry cash, so you know, they have a tip thing there, and I tip on the app because I pay with Starbucks with the app. If I pay with the app, I build up reward points. I get like at least one free coffee a week. But I tip through the app, and I was talking. But I wanted to know. I wanted to get a tip conversation going. And I said this. I was talking to the manager. He was helping me at Starbucks. This was yesterday, and I asked him how the tips work on the app, and he's like, well, what do you mean? And I said, if I tip on the app, because they have like a thing for the, you know, like a tip collection thing for the shift. I said, if I tip on the app, does it go to those of you working this shift, or does it go in the pot for the whole day? And he explained to me how the tips work at Starbucks, and he said if you pay on, he says if you tip in cash and you put it in the tip thing that they have for cash, he says that goes into a bin for the whole week, and then the whole staff divide that. That gets divided among the entire staff at the end of the week, the cash. And I got a sneeze coming on, guys. And he said if you tip on the app, it gets divided per shift that day. It gets added to our paycheck for that day. And he said, of course, you know, I couldn't believe this. This was the Starbucks manager. This was yesterday afternoon. He said, but of course, you know, we got all the taxes and everything that come out of all the tips, both ways that you tip, cash or the thing. And I said, no. I said, there's no tax on tips now. And he says, really? I said, yeah, no tax on tips. He said, that passed? I said, yeah. So I was shocked that he did not know that there were no tax on tips. This was the Starbucks manager, and he's not a young guy. He's not old, but he's old for a Starbucks guy. He's probably 35-ish. So, and I was talking to my daughter yesterday after my daughter came to the house last night, and I was telling her the story. And because when my daughter worked at Starbucks briefly back in high school, and when she first got out of high school, and I said, she's like, yeah, they don't follow the news, these Starbucks people. That's why they're liberals, right? And I said, well, if I was in a job that I was earning tips from every day and every week, believe me, I would know that I wasn't paying taxes on those tips. I said, that's like a big raise for all those people. She's like, yeah. She says they're not informed. They don't know what's going on. So I don't know. Maybe I started a conversation among the baristas at my Starbucks I go to that they're not paying taxes on tips anymore. That's also a savings for the company. You know, when they had taxes on tips. Hold on. on a second here. When they had, I'm going through a crazy place right here on the road. When they had taxes on tips, the employer, no matter what the company was, they had to pay taxes on those tips too. They shared the tax burden with the employees. So it's a tax savings for both the businesses and the tip workers. But I saw the look on his face. The guy, the Starbucks man, he was shocked when I told him that. Now, if you're new to my channel, I'll be at my destination soon. If you're new to my channel, make sure that you subscribe. My name is Brian. This is where MAGA comes to talk. Now, I don't know how much extra money that's going to be in their pocket every week, but they get a lot of tips there, I'll tell you that. But I'll tip on the app because I go in at the same time every day, so the people that I deal with, they'll get the tips as opposed to into the whole pool for the week. But those are, you know, that conversation, oh, this guy's passing me in the weird place. See, this hour of the morning, there's a lot of drunks on the road coming home from bars and clubs. I don't like being on the road at this hour, but I got no choice. Like this guy in front of me, as an example, is driving like an idiot. But those conversations like that one I had with the Starbucks worker, those are important conversations to bring up to people because we're promoting the great work that President Trump is doing. President Trump is helping so many millions of people who don't even know it. They hate him, and he's giving them all this help. They need to know what he's doing. The look on that guy's face when he realized when I told him there's no more taxes on his tips, he was like, he looked confused. Well, I hope he looked it up on his phone when I left and tells all the other workers. I cannot believe how many people are on the road at this hour. Almost at my destination, which is not my house. I'm not going to tell you where I'm at, but it's not my house. All right, I'll take a quick look at the chat before I sign off. Again, make sure you subscribe if you're new. My name is Brian. This is where MAGA comes to talk. Who cares about taxes on tips? People that are tip workers. That's who cares. And you would too. If you were getting tips, you would care. And can't you care about other people? Yeah. Oh, no. Yeah, people who work. That's right. People who work who earn tips. That's who cares about tips. I think that's great. I mean, and Trump does what's right. He doesn't, he doesn't do things. Unlike, liberals, Democrats, when they're in office, they only do things that help their constituents. President Trump does things that helps Americans, regardless of their political affiliation or anything else. Democrats, all they do, whatever they do is just to try to get another vote. President Trump does what he does because it's the right thing to do and it helps Americans and America. And that is a very unusual thing for presidents, but that's what President Trump is doing, and God bless him for it. Melania's letter was a beautiful letter. All right, guys, listen, I got to run. I will be back later. My name is Brian. This is where MAGA comes to talk. Make sure you subscribe if you were new to my channel. All right, take care.